It's the point and the time of the year for a franchise that is grasping. Just, we are on the edge of the cliff, holding on by our fingertips for this season that you read the title. I talked about it back in week 4. We're going to go more in depth today. What is up, Finn fans? We have to talk about a lot of things, and something came out that triggered this video needing to be made. Now, I do have some people that push back on me when I talk about we need to move on from Chris Grier. So I have compiled, and I'm talking tons of research, compiled all of his draft picks, and I started at 2019, all of his draft picks, all of his free agent moves, everything, and kind of talk about the team and where we're at, kind of things that are happening behind the scenes, things that are happening in the locker room, how this team is playing, everything. And we need to move on from Chris Grier. The Miami Dolphins need a fresh start. They need fresh eyes. And I'm not going to sit here and say, promote from within. No. If Stephen Ross wants to see a championship before he gives the reins of the Miami Dolphins either to somebody else in a cell or to his daughter, like the rumors are, he needs to move on from Chris Grier right now. And you're like, what about Mike McDaniel? I'm going to talk about Mike McDaniel. I'll talk about it right now. I've talked about it time and time again that Mike McDaniel will be decided on by the new GM, because you see how this team is playing. You see how soft they are playing. You see how when they go up against better teams, how they've won one game out of the past, 16. You've seen in the Colts how they shrink, how they're not disciplined. You see how some of these vets are probably just doing whatever they need to at this point. I'd be surprised if they win many games for the rest of the season, because I think they've mentally checked out. And that's on Mike McDaniel. So to me, you get a new GM and you let that new GM decide what he wants to do with Mike McDaniel. I would not fire Mike McDaniel. You know what? If Stephen Ross comes out and says they're both gone, then I'm going to be like, hey, that's the right decision. But if Stephen Ross is like, we're firing the GM, he'll decide on McDaniel, I'd be like, that makes sense too, because yeah, whatever. But this team is soft. This team is undisciplined. The franchise is... It's to the point now where how many years are we going to sit here and say, you got to let it, build out some more. This is year 6. This rebuild started in 2019, 2019, 2020, 2021. New coach, 2022, 2023. We're in 2024. How much longer are we going to give this rebuild? How much longer are we going to give Chris Grier cap space, money, decision-making to build a franchise when they couldn't do it in the first place? And again, I get people who don't want to move on from Chris Grier. So I've compiled his draft picks. I've compiled his free agent moves. We're going to look at the good and the bad, because there are good. I'm not going to sit here and say he did nothing good. There are good. And we're going to look at the team he built. And we're going to look at the decisions he made. And I'm going to tell you again, they need to move on. But the biggest thing that they need to move on, and this came out last night, is this. Wrong one. Sorry. I apologize. This one, right? Came out that, let me make it bigger so you guys can read it. McDaniel said Tuesday that news of Shaq Barrett coming out of retirement was news to him, and he found out from media reports Tuesday. Drew Rosenhaus told WSVN tonight that he told Grier on Monday that Shaq wanted to come out of retirement and play for the Dolphins. Did Grier not tell McDaniel? Right? That's one. I'm not even done, because then you got this. Maybe Grier didn't want to tell McDaniel immediately. All very strange, moot at this point. Then he also, Brayer Jackson says, Grier apparently also didn't tell Anthony Weaver, who said Tuesday that he found out from reporters when asked about it Tuesday. Hopefully we'll get Chubb update tomorrow, which is today. What? You want to see what my tweet was to that? You want to see what my tweet was to that? I'll show you what my tweet was to that. What is going on? This franchise. What is, how? Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? I wanted Brian Flores and Chris Grier fired after we started 1-7. And for some reason, Stephen Ross was like, we're going to keep Chris Grier. But Brian Flores, you got to go. Why? Why are you keeping a guy? And I have the proof. I have the factual proof sitting in front of me. Did you keep him? Because he was also part of a 1-7 start after multiple first-round picks, after millions of your dollars being spent. You still kept him around for him to do it to another head coach. The biggest, and I will get into all the facts, I promise you. I got a lot to get off my chest because I've been holding this back, and you're like, you're holding it back? I have been holding back since week 4 because I'm like, they're not going to fire him. They're not going to fire him. They need to now. You look at Tua Tagovailoa, and you could say the same thing about Justin Herbert. You look at, let me talk real quick. You look at Justin Herbert, right? He came out, he set records, fantastic, good for you, great quarterback. The thing hasn't won a playoff game because of the head coach, because of the weapons around him, because of the offensive line, because of a horrible defense. You could say the same, not horrible defense, because Tua had a very great defense around him because of Brian Flores, but you could say the same thing about Tua Tagovailoa. And I got something that's going to really chap your cheeks when I talk about the 2020 draft and who they could have got. And I ain't talking about Justin Herbert. You'll be surprised. If you have got a quarterback. And the funny thing is, you guys know TD Finstock. He even brought this up a couple years ago. If you know you have a quarterback who, 1, is injury prone, 2 is injury prone. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you know he's injury prone, you know he's not fast, and he's a pocket passer, then you build a team around him that is for a pocket passer. You don't build a team around him with flashy weapons. That's Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel has come out and said, I love my weapons. I love my pass rushers. Who do they take in the first round? Who do they go and trade for? Weapons and pass rushers. You know what I'm saying? I love, and they don't care about the offensive line because that's the scheme. And then Tua comes out and says, I get the ball out quick. Of course he's going to say that because that's what they're forcing the man to do. Now, I'm not sitting here being an apologist. I just told you Tua's injury prone. But why would you do that? I can get the ball out quick. Yes, you can, Tua, but you shouldn't have to. That's like an abusive girlfriend seeing you with a black eye, and then they say, what happened? Did he hit you? Yeah, but I talk back. That shouldn't be a thing. Tua shouldn't have to come out and say, I get the ball out quick, I'm fine. No. Because when you go up against playoff teams, when you go up against the Green Bay Packers, when you go up against the Rams, who have a very good defensive line, it doesn't matter how quick you get the ball out because your receivers are going to get jammed and you're going to get stuffed in the face with sacks. Pause on that. That is the team. That's not Tua's fault. That's the team built around him. That's the inept GM sitting back and saying, you're more worried about the offensive line than we are. Because you want to talk about stat padding? You want to talk about Tua Tagovailoa coming out and everyone looks at his stats and says, well, he only does really good against bad teams. So does the offensive line. You look at the offensive line this year, everyone wants to be like, oh, we're got a good ranked offensive line because they do it against bad teams. They got destroyed against the Green Bay Packers. They get destroyed against the Rams. When they face a good defensive front, they get pushed back on their butts. So Then you have to force your quarterback to get the ball out quick. All of a sudden, we don't have those deep passes. All of a sudden, Tyreek Hill's not getting 100-yard games. All of a sudden, what's going on? What's the problem? The team is built wrong. You're building a team for a mobile quarterback when you don't have a mobile quarterback. That's like putting Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. Pick a non-mobile quarterback, throw him behind an offensive line that's good, not good, and say, you got to get the ball out quick. No. Peyton Manning had an anchor of a center and Saturday in front of him. Like, Tom Brady had a very good offensive line. You look at the teams that are doing great. Look at Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was on the way out. The Philadelphia Eagles stacked up on first-round picks because they were going to move on from Jalen Hurts. And what did they do? They put a God squad around that man. They put one of the best offensive lines in football. They put some of the best wide receiver duos. They put the best defense around him. And what happened? He went to the Super Bowl. What do the Dolphins do? Hey, Tua, you better get that ball out quick or you're going to die. Explain to me how that is a good GM exercise. And you know what the Eagles did this year? The Eagles said, you know what, Jalen? We're going to take even less off you. We're going to add Saquon Barkley to the mix, who is now the best running back in football. You know what Chris Grier did? Tua, you better get that ball out quick. We got no money. That's Tua's fault. People want to blame Tua because they have no money. Tua's not the one who came out here and said, can you go get Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and pay him a buttload of money? I don't need an offensive line in front of him. No, that was Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier talking about flashy weapons. If you know what quarterback you have, you build around him. You do it correctly. And this GM has not done it correctly for the 5 years that Tua Tagovailoa was in this I was going to say world on this team. And a lot of people sit back and say, oh, if we only had Justin Herbert. Oh, if we only had a Jordan Love. Oh, if we only had so-and-so. Oh, Tua sucks. We put so-and-so back there. We win these games. No, because Chris Grier does not know how to build a team around his quarterback. You think Jordan Love is going to survive? Jordan Love struggled his first few years. Jordan Love got to sit behind a future Hall of Famer. Sucks now. That's what Jordan Love got to do. Tua got forced in against Aaron Donald and the Rams. You don't think Jordan Love's going to get forced out there? You don't think that Justin Herbert's going to get forced out there? He did, and he did well, but he also had better weapons. He had a bad offensive line, but he had Keenan Allen, he had Williams, he had Hunter Henry, he had Austin Eckler. Yak. Go look at his record-breaking rookie year. He was third in the NFL or fourth in the NFL in yak. Good for you. You have that accurate pass. But build a team. So if any of these quarterbacks were on the Dolphins, same thing would happen. Exact same thing would happen. But let's talk about Chris Grier some more. And I'm giving you more facts on why we need to move on from him. We'll talk about the draft. 2019 was a draft where we essentially were restarting, right? Christian Wilkins was the pick. Loved the pick. Great pick. Then the second round comes. And this is where I was like, Chris Grier, again, Chris Grier is on his own. I'm like, okay, I like Chris Grier a little bit. I didn't want Josh Rosen. Go back to my channel in 2019. I did not want Josh Rosen. After day one draft, I made a video saying, do not trade for Josh Rosen. For the love of God, please don't trade for Josh Rosen. They did it anyway. But they did it smart. The Cardinals were like, we want this. And Chris Grier was like, okay. We want this. Chris Grier said, give me a second. Picked up the phone with the Saints, made a trade with the Saints, traded down, picked up an extra second, then made a trade with the Arizona Cardinals, which was genius. Absolutely genius. Now, unfortunately, they took Josh Rosen, who ended up not being great. But again, if you wanted to tank, you started Josh Rosen, not Ryan Fitzpatrick. But the other thing, third round, they take Dieter. Not knocking Dieter. He wasn't good. He wasn't great. You know who went? So Dieter went pick 78. You know who went pick 96? Dawson Knox, the tight end for the Buffalo Bills. Third round, right? We didn't have a fourth round pick because we traded that to the Eagles for the trade back. They gave us a second next year. You know, we did all that Shazam. You know who went in the fourth round? The beginning of the fourth round? Again, we took Dieter. You know who went in the beginning of the fourth round? Max Crosby. Max Crosby. The man can't draft. Chris Grier can't draft. But then in the 5th round, he takes Andrew Van Ginkel. Great pick. Value pick. We all know what happened there, and I will get to that. 2020 draft. That's where everything goes, comes to fruition. Takes Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert. We're going to have that discussion. Everyone's had that debate. But let's put things into perspective about that. Go back to March. Go back to early April of the 2020 draft. Before the draft, when people had their prospects list, when professionals and GMs came out, they had Tua Tagovailoa ranked in the 10s. They had Justin Herbert ranked in the 15, 20s on their big boards. Taking Tua over Herbert at the time wasn't that crazy. It was crazy because of the hip injury. Go back and watch my video. That scared the crap out of me. And I knew that if they took a quarterback, whether it was Herbert or whether it was Tua, we weren't going to get a tackle for a while because there was going to be run on tackles. That's exactly what happened. But they take they take Austin Jackson. Austin Jackson ended up panning out to be okay. He was not a first-round talent. You know who went like 4 picks later after Austin Jackson? Justin Jefferson. You know how Tua played that 2022 season with nobody his rookie year? Half his receivers in the 2020 season aren't in the NFL anymore. Imagine if he had Justin Jefferson. Cesar Ruiz went to the Saints. Could have took Cesar Ruiz, right? Then we take Noah Igbinoghene, who we traded down, right? We traded down with the Packers, picked up a 4th in 2020. We took Noah Igbinoghene. Why? No one will ever know. DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor was a possibility. Then we take Robert Hunt in the 2nd. Great pick. Jonathan Taylor was still on the board, but I do like the Robert Hunt pick. We take Raekwon Davis with that's where we got the 2nd round for the year before with the trade down. I take Brandon Jones. We take Solomon Kinley in the 4th. We traded up. For Solomon Kinley. Our 136 and 141 to go up for Solomon Kinley. You know who went 146? Tyler Badaz, center to the Cowboys. Very good center. We take Solomon Kinley. He's not in the NFL anymore. Fantastic, isn't it? We take Strawbridge and Weaver in the 5th round. Weaver didn't even make the team. Weaver didn't even make training camp. Strawbridge ain't in the NFL anymore either. And we trade a 5th for Breida. We take Blake Ferguson and Malcolm Perry. Blake Ferguson still on the team, but is he? Because I don't know what happened to him. 2021 draft. That's when the trade happened, right? We traded down from 3 to 12. We picked up a 1st in 2022. We picked up 1st in 2023 and a 3rd in 2022. Great trade, but then he trades back up. And he gives up one of those first, the 2022 first, ours though. Yes. So we give the 12th and our 1st in 2022 to pick up a 6th. And the 6th overall pick and the 5th in 2021. We take Jalen Waddle. Obviously Penei Sewell was still there. I was a toss-up between Waddle and Sewell. Obviously, if we take Justin Jefferson the year before, we don't take Waddle and we take Penei Sewell. See how things end differently if we had a good GM. Then we take Jalen Phillips. I'm okay with that one. We take Javon Holland in the 2nd. That was great. We then trade up. We trade our 50th and our 3rd in 2022. We trade up to take Liam Eichenberg. You know who the Giants took with the pick that they traded up with? Azeez Ojulari, who's a very good pass rusher for them right now. You know who else we could have took? We could have took Creed Humphreys, Nick Bolton, Jeremiah Usukamara, Pat Freiermuth. There were so many different players, but we traded up for Liam Eichenberg. And then we take Hunter Long. You know who else was on the board? Quentin Miners, Ramondre Stevenson, the running back, but we take Hunter Long because he went to Boston College. Brian Flores was familiar with him in Boston College. Then 2022, we have Channing Tindall, Eric Izukama, Good, and Skylar Thompson. We all know how that's panning out. We have 2023 with Cam Smith. Tank Dowell is still on the board. We obviously didn't need a receiver because we got Tyreek. Devon Achane, great pick. And Higgins, we don't even know about him. And then this year we got Chop, Paul, Wright, Kamara, Malik McMorris. Now, I'm not going to judge on this year's because we don't know. Now, obviously, the biggest thing and the thing that Chris Grier is going to be known for is that Laramie Tunsil trade. It was a big trade, huge trade. He also made some very good trades throughout, like the trade for, my brain's not working. The trade for Jalen Ramsey, we sent like Hunter Long in a third. It was nothing. The trade for Tyreek was a lot, but it was only one first. So I wasn't too upset about that. But we'll look at his free agency now, right? Veteran addition in 2019, we had a Fitzpatrick, Mark Walton, Dwayne Allen, Clive Walford, you remember that guy? Chris Reed, and Eric Rowe. Remember Eric Rowe? We lost Tannehill, Frank Gore, Danny Amendola, Juwan James, Josh Sitton, Cameron Wake, Robert Quinn, and William Hayes. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go too harsh on 2019 because 2019 was the rebuild and we tore it all down. The 2020 free agency, that's when we had money and that's when we were throwing it around. We brought in Breida on a trade. We brought Jordan Howard, Eric Flowers, Ted Karras, Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Kyle Van Noy, Cam Grugier-Hill, Landon Roberts, Byron Jones, Clinton Fegelum, and we lost Clive Walford, Evan Boehm, Aqib Talib, and Rashad Jones. Huge addition. Absolute huge addition. A lot of defense, some offensive line there, but like Eric Flowers, he did all right. Ted Karras did good, but obviously we didn't keep him. But the messed up thing is, right? So they brought in Kyle Van Noy next year. Kyle Van Noy's gone. They bring in Ted Karras next year. Ted Karras is gone. Shaq Lawson, they brought him in next year. Shaq Lawson's gone. Who else? Grugier-Hill they brought in next year. Grugier-Hill's gone. It's like all of these additions they brought in, the next year they were cut. So what was the point of bringing them in? Because in 2021, we had Jacoby Brissett, horrible. Malcolm Brown, Will Fuller, horrible. Jeremiah Umenyiora, which was good, but we cut him. Matt Skura, John Jenkins, good pick. Adam Butler, Brendan Scarlett, no. Benardrick McKinney, okay. Duke Riley still with the team. Shaquem Griffin, gone. Justin Coleman. And again, we let go of Fitz. He retired. Breida. Ted Karras, gone. Shaq Lawson, we signed him before, gone. Devon Gotchow goes. Kyle Van Noy, we signed him the year before, gone. Grugier-Hill signed him the year before, gone. So what was the point of that big free agent signing in 2020 if you're going to get rid of all of them in 2022? And then the same thing happens in 2022. Sorry, big signing 20, lost them in 2021. Then 2022, we bring in Teddy Bridgewater. I was okay with that move because I thought Teddy Bridgewater would help us a lot. Obviously, he didn't. He couldn't stay healthy. Brought in Raheem Mostert, great move. Chase Edmonds, that was a good move. Then he ended up wanting to leave. Sony Michel, Alec Ingold, Tyreek Hill trade there. But the Tyreek Hill trade kind of messed up things because they brought in Cedric Wilson. So it's like, what are you doing there? Trent Sherfield, Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, and Melvin Ingram, Keon Crossan. This is when they were like, we'll try to fix this offensive line. Fortunately, they brought in Teron Armstead, who gets banged up. But Connor Williams was a great addition. At center, we lose Breida, Ted Karras, Shaq Lawson, Devon Gotchow, Kyle Van Noy. It was the same as before. This site is off. And then 2023, we lose. We bring in Mike White, Braxton Berrios, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Croft, Malik Reed, David Long. This is the trade for Jalen Ramsey, Deshaun Elliott, Jake Bailey. The addition of Mike White made no sense to me. Again, it's another situation where they don't bring in a capable backup when your quarterback can't stay healthy. And then this past offseason, we lost so much. Robert Hunt, Connor Williams, Andrew Van Ginkel, Emmanuel Ogbah, we end up bringing him back. Christian Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Jerome Baker, Xavier Howard, Brandon Jones. It's just the loss didn't equate to the wins. And the one that hurts and POs me, pisses off me, that makes no sense, is Andrew Van Ginkel. He wanted to stay. His wife even came out and said, we weren't offered a contract. If we were offered any type of contract, we would have stayed. He wanted to stay. So you look at his track list, Chris Grier. He's done good. I'm not going to sit here and say, he's done bad. Because you even look at Tua's contract, even though, again, I wanted him to play on the fifth-year option because I was afraid of his injuries. You look at Tua's contract, he has an out after next year. So it's a team friendly contract. You look at some of these other contracts and they have the outs at the right parts and they make certain moves. But you look at some of his trades. Now, the trade for Jalen Ramsey, I love that trade. I think it was a steal of a trade. Tyreek Hill trade, we gave up what did we give up? I think it was a first. Traded a first, a second, a fourth, 2 fourths, and a sixth for Tyreek Hill. And gave him a fat contract. We also traded Devontae Parker, which was surprising to me. We got a 3rd round pick for Devontae Parker. Absolutely nuts. But we traded a 5th, but still. And we traded a 1st round pick for Bradley Chubb. When Roquan Smith was out there. Roquan Smith was the move. So there was a lot of bad moves. Like I said, there was good moves. Jalen Ramsey, some of the contracts, some of the draft picks, and Robert Hunt, and Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel. But the positives don't outweigh the negatives. And we're at a point now where we're sitting here with a horrible record. Tomorrow, after the Broncos game, I will, I'm going to release a video kind of talking about our playoffs hopes. They're slim to none. They're still alive, but they're slim to none. We're in the hunt. If you ever look at like where they show, we're in the hunt. There's only 2 teams in the hunt. It's us and it's the Indianapolis Colts. Outside of that, it isn't. And if the Broncos lose, that helps because if we have the same record as the Broncos, when the season ends, we win the tiebreaker over the Broncos. But we're sitting here at 5-7. We won 11 games last year. We were a 3-game lead on the division last year. We're sitting here at 5-7 because you weren't capable enough to get a backup quarterback. You weren't capable enough to build a good trenches. And if we're in cap hell, that's Chris Grier's fault. It's time to move on. It's time for fresh eyes to look at this organization. And it's time for a new GM to come in and decide, a competent one from an organization that has winning, one from an organization that has picked good players and done the right things, not from within. Not from within. It doesn't make any sense because from within has been here for 6 years and has been part of the problem. Go out and get someone from the Chiefs. Go out and get someone from the Steelers. Go out and get someone from Detroit. Those teams know how to draft players. Those teams know how to build franchises. And let them decide what happens to Mike McDaniel. But right now, I think they both should go. Gun to my head, I'm firing Mike McDaniel. Because I'm not liking what I'm seeing or hearing coming out of that locker room. So, comment below. What do you think? If you don't think we should fire Chris Grier, what do you think about all the negatives? What do you think about where we are now? Why shouldn't we fire Chris Grier? And don't say, oh, we got to give him more time. He's had 6 years on this rebuild. How much more time do you want to give him? Because you give him more time, you miss out on potential candidates. You give him more time, you miss out on potential good head coaches. Mike Vrabel is not going to be sitting out there for another year. So if you want to get Mike Vrabel, which I don't know if he'd want to come here, you got to make a move. Every 3 years, that's the rotation in the NFL. Some coaches don't make a year. But you got to keep doing it. It's like drafting a quarterback. You got to keep doing it till you find him. And if you want to be stuck at, oh, we're in the hunt, and then, oh, we just got in the playoffs, we knocked out of the playoffs in the first round, hey, but at least we made the playoffs, there's a chance we could build off of this, yada, yada, then sure, we'll keep Chris Grier because that's where we're going to stay. We're going to stay a 500 team forever. But if you want to change and you want to shake things up, you got to move on. He's been with the team for 9 years. He's been with the team for 20-something years. He's been our GM for 9 years. He's had control for 6. It's time to move on. Comment below. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Like usual, stay classy. Effins out.